Hey everyone, it's Sarah, and I am back to film my reading journal for the month of July. I know we're already into mid-August, but it was just a busy start of August for me, so I haven't had time to film this yet. But diving in. First off, I have my reading tracker. This is kind of generally tracking how much I picked up or how much I read each day that I read a book, if that makes sense. There were a number of days that I didn't read at all. It was just kind of a busy month, especially near the end of the month and beginning of August. I didn't read as much because the Olympics were on. We had some travel, some family events. So not my best reading month, but some reading is better than no reading at all. Then moving into July, I had my favorite book for the month was My Sister the Serial Killer, and I read 5 books total. Then, kind of visualizing when I started and finished books, I had 3 books I started that I didn't finish this month that I'll be finishing in August. I also had Oliver Twist, which I was still working on from, I think I started that one in April. So glad to get that done. But as you can see, it wasn't the busiest reading month by any means. Then looking at some goals for the month, I had my 2 games, or kind of reading games that I've been doing, Bookopoly and Roll Your Read. And Bookopoly I still haven't finished. I have a prompt that says, has more than 500 pages. So still working on that. Haven't read anything that long recently. And then we have Roll Your Read, which the title has 5 or more words. And I used My Sister the Serial Killer for that one. In terms of what types of books I was reading, I read more Kindle and audiobooks than I did physical books. I think I just had 1 physical book this month, which was Oliver Twist. And then kind of top priorities, I finished Oliver Twist. I did not read 7 books, but that's okay. And then I also read The Big Library Read. This was a, I don't know, like promotion or collaboration that a lot of libraries did if they had the Libby app, where anyone could download Twilight Territory and read it, kind of as like a big book club, big library read. Everyone could read it. And so I downloaded that, and we'll get into my thoughts on the book later, but I thought that was kind of fun. I've done it before. I know One Summer in Savannah was one they did. I can't remember if it was in the winter time, but I think that was the last big library read that I read. And then I didn't finish any bingos this month. Again, I only read 5 books, and only 4 of them even fit my bingo prompts, so no big deal there. Then moving into my Goodreads tracker, like I said, I read 2 audiobooks, 2 Kindle books, and then a physical book. And again, only read 5 books this month, which is my lowest end, but I did read more pages than in June, so that's good. So then moving into the individual books, first and foremost, we have Oliver Twist. And to give a little backstory, this is my second time reading a Charles Dickens novel. And the first time I read a Charles Dickens novel, I was in high school. It was my freshman year. I think that was the first book we read in the fall of our freshman year honors English class, was Great Expectations. And I remember having a hard time getting through the book. I remember having a hard time kind of digesting what was going on in the book. And I don't know if it was just because it was probably the hardest thing I'd read up until that point. I've always been a reader. I've always read a lot of books. But something about the way Dickens specifically wrote, I found it very difficult to understand and to kind of process. So also, I didn't like my English teacher when I was in 9th grade, so that probably didn't help either. He wasn't a very warm and fuzzy kind of a person. So I just remember not really enjoying reading Great Expectations. Then when we finished Great Expectations, I loved, how the story all came together. I could appreciate the literary merit of the book, but in the initial, reading it and trying to understand it. I just did not enjoy that process. So going into reading Oliver Twist, I think I carried some of that, baggage from previously reading Charles Dickens, even though it was a different book, into this, just because I think I went into it with, I know this is going to be hard. I know this is going to be maybe not so enjoyable. I know this is going to be difficult, but at the same time too, I've wanted to read Oliver Twist for a long time. And my first experience with Oliver Twist was Oliver the musical. And I know I've seen that a couple of different times, growing up. I don't know if I've ever seen the actual movie version of the play, or if I've just seen the, play, like in-person version, but loved it growing up. And like I said, I've probably seen a couple of different adaptations of it. So it's something that I've had fond memories of Oliver specifically. And so I wanted to read the book for a long time. But I think that I was slow in reading the book, or didn't want to pick up the book a lot because I was worried about it being hard, or just kind of had that expectation going into it that I might not enjoy it because Dickens maybe isn't my favorite writer, or I don't love reading Dickens. But anyways, I finished the book. I gave it 4 stars. And for an overview, Oliver is an orphan. He was born in the workhouse, very hard times. The poorest of the poor are living there. And he's a really good person. He's a great individual. He's a great soul, despite these kind of horrid conditions that he grows up in, and then, the love that he really doesn't get from any adult figures at this point in his life. And despite all that, he's a very good person. But he also manages to get himself into, some kind of troublesome situations, or, people kind of turn against him in certain regards or certain instances. And so he ends up having to, essentially run away, and he goes off to London and meets Fagin and the Artful Dodger, and is enveloped into their group. Now, they're not necessarily good people. Well, they're not good people. They are pickpockets and thieves. They also have girls in their group like Nancy, who are likely prostitutes, even though it doesn't specifically say that. So they're definitely, kind of this crime family almost, this crime ring. And Oliver doesn't realize that at first. They don't really tell him what's going on until they kind of throw him right into the mix. And when he realizes what's going on, he really doesn't want to be a part of it. But, because he's kind of been enveloped into their group, they're not going to just let him go easily. So yeah, and then there's more misadventures that go. Their stories, are kind of intertwined throughout the rest of the book. But, it was just a really good novel. Even though, like I said, I had a hard time wanting to pick it up. It took me a while to read. I still really, really liked the novel. I was really proud of myself for finishing it. Really excited that I did, finally make it through. And I did enjoy it overall. I gave it 4 stars because, like I said, I just didn't want to continually pick it up, or there was just part of me that didn't want to. So I couldn't give it 5 stars, but really good book. And then while I was reading it, I also read the Spark Notes after I had finished, the coordinating chapters. And I think that helped too, just to kind of get some of the deeper meanings that maybe I would have missed otherwise. So 4 stars, would recommend reading it. I don't think I'll go back and read it again, but really appreciate it. And now I really want to watch the play, or, the movie version of the musical again. Next up, we have The 7th Girl. And The 7th Girl follows Kat. Her best friend was murdered by a serial killer. I believe she was the 7th victim. And now, 15 years later, Kat's a detective. She's working in the police force. And the same kind of signatures are coming up in these new murders. And the question is whether or not it's a copycat or if it's the same guy that, has all of a sudden returned after 15 years. So it's up to her to figure out what's going on, who's the murderer, and also, try to solve her best friend's murder. Enjoyed it. I thought it was, kind of a page turner, or I wanted to keep reading it. I enjoyed it, and I think they said there'd be more with this detective or these characters, so would be interested in reading more of that in the future. So 4 stars. And then next I had My Sister the Serial Killer, which is what I put as my favorite book for the month. I didn't have any 5-star reads this month, so it was a little hard to choose which one was my favorite because I had a lot of, good books. I didn't have any that just absolutely blew me away. And so I picked this one as my favorite just because I thought it was most different, and I really enjoyed, picking it up. And when I was reading it, I really enjoyed it. So we listened to this one as an audiobook. It was really short, just 4 hours and 15 minutes. But you follow Corday and Ayula, and they're 2 sisters, and I can't remember what country they come from in Africa, but, kind of a different culture down there. And Ayula has this habit of killing her boyfriends. And she'll call on Corday to help her clean up the mess. Corday is, I believe, the older sister, so, she's kind of used to taking care of her younger sister and helping her out of these kind of sticky situations. And, but at the end of the day, she loves her sister, and, she's going to help her even though her sister is obviously not making good decisions for herself. And then that kind of comes to, a point of contention when Ayula sets her sight on dating a doctor at Corday's, it's like a hospital or clinic. She's a nurse, and Corday has a crush on this doctor. So now, she's trying to avert Ayula from the doctor. And, the question is kind of, what are you going to do? Now you've got kind of a personal connection to what you're assuming is going to be a victim later. So it was funny. It was dark. I laughed more than I thought I would in this book. So I definitely recommend it as a short, kind of thriller. I believe it won some prizes. I think it says the Booker Prize on the cover. So it was definitely, kind of an interesting, good read. My husband and I both enjoyed it. Next, coming up, we read The Woman in the Window. I listened to this one as an audiobook as well. And the story follows Anna Fox. She's agoraphobic, which means that she can't leave her house. She's afraid of, the outside world. She wants to just be in her own space, with everything kind of under her control. And she can't hold down a job because of the agoraphobia. She's, really just kind of making it through life and, stays at home all the time. So one of the things that she does to pass the time is spying on her neighbors. She will watch her neighbors and kind of make up stories for them if she does, trying to figure out what they're doing, and, kind of creating backstory or names or just seeing patterns and things like that in their behavior. Well, she has some new neighbors that move in, and one day she witnesses something not good. And the problem is that she's definitely an unreliable narrator, in the sense that, she drinks a lot, she's on a lot of medications, she's definitely not always with it. And so now it's trying to convince other people that she saw what she saw, or did she see what she thinks she saw, and trying to get, justice for this thing that she thinks she witnessed. So I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was interesting, a little bit different than what I've read before, and enjoyed the premise of it. So 4 stars. Then last but not least, I have that big library read. This was not my favorite book for the month. This I only gave 3 stars. So this is Twilight Territory. It's historical fiction, and it takes place in Vietnam in World War II and after. And I didn't know a lot about Vietnam in that time period. I probably don't know that much about Vietnam just in general, but apparently it was a French colony, and then you had World War II, the Japanese came in, and they how do you say that, like kind of took over, occupied Vietnam during the war. And then after the war, you kind of have this fight for power of who's going to control the country, like the French, the Vietnamese, the Japanese. And so then it's kind of like the distension, or the political tensions after World War II. So that's kind of like the broad overview of the story. And then you have Tuyet, who is a kind of a works in a shop with her aunt in the small fishing village. They're just trying to make it through the war. Well, then she catches the eye of a Japanese commander, and he kind of wants to get to know her better on a more personal level, and kind of how their stories intertwine, and you go through the rest of the timeline. I thought the writing wasn't my favorite. There were times that I was a little confused. I think the history wasn't always explained as well as I would have liked it for someone that has no experience with this time frame or in Vietnam. And there were parts that were just boring. So I gave it 3 stars. And yeah, it just wasn't my favorite. But I read it, and that was that. So that was everything I read for this month. Like I said, just 5 books. It was kind of short, but I'll be back very soon because we're already halfway through August to talk about my August reads in just a few weeks. So I hope you have a good day, and I will see you later. Bye.